Benvenuti. This is the Italian News in English podcast for the week of August 20th, 2012. Mi chiamo Gio, reporting today on these stories in Italian news. According to the Corriere della Sera, the extensive report released this summer by the Government Court of Auditors on the state of the nation's finances includes a damning assessment of Italy's stewardship of its rich trove of artistic treasures. While the report acknowledges that budget cuts during the lengthy global recession are one factor in the nation's poor maintenance of its singular historic and artistic legacy, the auditors also identify mismanagement and bureaucratic inefficiency on the ministry level as key factors to be addressed. One challenge is the sheer enormity of Italy's cultural heritage. According to auditor Francesco D'Amaro, Italy is caretaker for about 3,430 museums, 216 archaeological sites, 10,000 churches, 1,500 monasteries, 40,000 historic castles, towers, and forts, 30,000 stately homes, 4,000 gardens, and more than 1,000 important one-of-a-kind city centers. Italy holds more UNESCO World Heritage Sites. UNESCO stands for the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization than any other nation on earth. In fact, one could argue that the tremendous stewardship burden Italy carries, given how no other country possesses as many sites and as many individual pieces worthy of preservation, should be shared the world over, since the modern world owes much to Italy's influential cultural legacy. In any event, creating a record of the individual works of art or each artifact at these sites and their meaning, condition, needs, and monetary value is a daunting prospect. The Courier reports that since 1986, Italy has allocated more than 2.1 billion euros to create such a record, with nothing tangible to show for it. And this seems to capture the essence of the report. When it comes to preserving Italy's cultural legacy, there's not enough money allocated, and when money is made available, the opportunity to make a difference, or at least make a beginning, is wasted. The Courier, quoting from the report, notes long-standing widespread deficiencies in the maintenance conditions of archaeological sites, such as Pompeii near Naples, often managed by special commissioners with powers to waive ordinary administration, which engender a lack of transparency in spending procedures. The report also states, a certain inability to manage spending on the part of peripheral offices of the Cultural Heritage Ministry has led to the buildup of substantial amounts of cash in hand, albeit due in part to the slowness of tender procedures and delays in the arrival of central government funds, suggesting that even when cash is allocated to protect, secure, or restore a cultural treasure, it remains inaccessible for extended periods of time, sometimes never reaching those ready to put it to good use. As for the impact of budget cuts, Italy's public funding for the care of its artistic and historic legacy is now 0.19% of government spending, or just about 56% of what Italy was devoting to its cultural treasures before 2010. As the Courier points out, France, by comparison, spends 5 times more than Italy on preserving its cultural heritage. And with Prime Minister Mario Monti's ongoing reforms and budget cuts, seeking to stabilize the Italian economy and attract new investment, Italy's spending on heritage sites is almost certain to continue to decline. Last year, according to the Courier, more than a third of the Cultural Ministry's 147 million euros generated from an income tax levy was sent to fund Italy's prisons instead. What are the practical outcomes if the funding and management problems cited by the auditors are not addressed? First and foremost, Italy, and the world, face the prospect of watching its heritage, its roots, where we came from, slowly rot away, vanish. At Pompeii, a Roman city of about 20,000 people, abandoned after a violent Vesuvius eruption in 79 AD, and preserved nearly whole for centuries under ash, is now decaying, with faded mosaics, crumbling buildings, vandalism, and ever-encroaching commercialism. And as the Courier points out, even the renowned Uffizi Art Museum in beautiful Florence, housing one of the world's greatest collections of art, is so limited on space that it can only share less than half of its amazing collection with the public. And funding for restoration, preservation, and expansion is tough to come by. Weather also takes its toll, with earthquakes damaging important churches and homes, including in Abruzzo. Cold and snow last winter, causing part of a wall in Rome's Colosseum to collapse, and floods in Liguria, practically leveling historic fishing villages. But perhaps Venice is the most dramatic example. As global warming raises water levels in the Adriatic, and the old city, built upon thousands of oak pylons now well into their second millennia, slowly sinks into the muck, just over half an inch a year according to the latest estimates. One of Italy's crown jewels, the beautiful, historic city of Venice, a singular place on earth, a city built with human hands on water by desperate refugees fleeing barbarian marauders after the fall of Rome in the 5th century, is dying. And the cost of a long-term preservation project, shoring up the pylons, raising the city, or at least establishing control of the water level within the old city itself, and repairing the damage already caused by salt water that's risen well beyond the level of the stone foundations of the palazzi, is staggering. Further complicating matters is the reality that Venice survives today on tourism, including large cruise ships that dock in the lagoon and that contribute to erosion. While just 60,000 residents live in Venice, about 15 million visitors descend on this fragile, decaying treasure each year. If the auditor's report goes unheeded then, another eventual outcome could be the loss of tourism revenue for Italy, with many visitors drawn to the unique cultural riches Italia offers. According to the Italian Institute of Statistics, Italy's tourism industry generated about 137 billion euros in 2011 and almost 2 million jobs in 2010. And Italy was first place among EU nations in terms of meeting its capacity for available accommodations, a staggering 2.2 million beds in 2009, meaning that the nation was the most popular vacation destination among Europeans, edging France and Spain. Furthermore, Italy remains in the top 5 of global holiday destinations, according to the World Travel and Tourism Council. More than 46 million people visited Italy in 2011, a country that has a population of about 60 million. And tourism in Italy now accounts for almost 9% of gross domestic product. What would happen to Italy's already struggling economy if Venice ceased to exist or could not be safely visited? If Rome's Colosseum collapsed? If Pompeii was simply worn away by neglect and weather? If a significant portion of its artistic masterpieces fell beyond human ability to restore, and many of the nation's churches, constructed by generations of townspeople centuries ago, crumble, are roped off and deserted, left to decay in the Italian sun? The consequences for the Italian economy and the loss of jobs for the Italian people, especially those 25 years and younger, already coping with unemployment of almost 35%, are unthinkable. Perhaps the auditor's report released this summer presents an opportunity for a new beginning, for a renewed commitment to securing Italy's cultural treasures for future generations around the world. Perhaps the sober assessment offered by the auditors will also promote greater understanding of the value of this legacy to the Italian economy and to the quality of life for Italians, spurring new investment and much-needed reforms in management and bureaucratic protocols. But it also remains entirely possible that the cultural chapter included in this audit of the nation's accounts, like so many government-commissioned documents over the centuries in Italy, will illuminate only briefly and ultimately slip into the dark recesses of old file cabinets and offices across the nation to collect historic dust. And while those working feverishly to stop Italy's economic bleeding ask reasonably, how can we afford to do more? Others ask, with equal rationality, how can we afford not to? We'll be back in less than a minute with news briefs from across Italy.
Whatever happened to the records that had real grooves and played on Grandma's TV set? Sounded like a jumbo jet when the needle hit the grooves. Whatever happened to you? It makes it better when you sing along. It doesn't matter if you get the words all wrong. It's so much better when you sing along. La 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 la. Whatever happened to the little girl that I once knew?
That was a bit of Phil Angotti's Whatever Happened To from the People and Places CD, available for purchase on iTunes. Briefly now, the Sicily-based discount airline WindJet shut down operations last Sunday, with Alitalia and other airlines helping stranded passengers across the country reach their destinations for an additional fee. Some 300,000 passengers hold tickets for flights with WindJet through October, with tour operators worldwide standing to lose money as they book new flights for their clients following WindJet's collapse. WindJet stopped operating without advance notice, but ANSA reports that the airline has been facing cash shortfalls for some time. Alitalia had entered into negotiations to buy WindJet, but backed out, saying WindJet officials were unable to produce necessary documentation on the company's operations. The collapse of this deal appears to have precipitated WindJet's decision to shut down. Last week, Alitalia added 20 additional flights to Sicily. According to ANSA, an Italian diver named Vasco Fronzoni has found a 5,000-year-old sunken ship near the Isle of Capri in the Gulf of Naples. Fronzoni of Capri says the ship contains a cache of ancient obsidian, a purple and black rock that forms naturally when magma cools. Before man discovered how to make metal, obsidian was commonly used to make weapons or utensils, ANSA reports. Fronzoni believes the discovery could cause historians to rethink their understanding of ancient trade routes. Italy's Foreign Minister Giulio Terzi said last week that Italy supports fully new United Nations Special Envoy to Syria, Lakhdar Brahimi of Algeria, and that the only path to peace for Syrians is a government without President Bashar al-Assad. Assad has been waging a brutal, bloody war against his own population as a means of sustaining his political authority, and Terzi urged the UN Security Council to resolve its differences and pursue rapidly a greater role in stopping the bloodshed. According to the United Nations, Assad is responsible for the death of some 18,000 Syrians, including thousands of civilians, men, women, and children, since the uprising against his regime began in the spring of 2011. An official with the Free Syrian Army, an organization fighting to bring down Assad, said this weekend that Syrian Vice President Farouk al-Shara has abandoned the government. Although Assad spokesman denied the defection, rebels say they're trying to smuggle the vice president safely out of the country, according to CNN. Terzi, speaking for Mario Monti's Italian government earlier this month, after the defection of Syrian Prime Minister Riyad Hijab, issued this statement. The defection of Syrian Prime Minister Riyad Hijab is proof of Assad's gradual isolation, even within his own tight circle, and is a clear sign of how violence against his own people is pushing the regime toward inexorable implosion. Terzi concluded that the Syrian people deserve to walk into a new phase of their own history, freely deciding their future. Italian firefighters battled more than 30 brush and forest fires across Italy last week, with scorching hot temperatures as high as 100 degrees Fahrenheit in places, dry conditions, and even arson cited as causes by civil protection authorities. In Tuscany, about 1,000 campers were evacuated from campgrounds as firefighters battled forest fires near the coast. Many campers were forced to spend the night in a nearby shopping center for their own safety, while local residents and restaurateurs provided food and drink for them at no cost. More than 120 hectares of forest have already been destroyed. In the Maremma, a vast area that includes southwestern Tuscany and northern Lazio along the sea, 19 thoroughbred horses were killed in a blaze started by pyromaniacs, according to the Telegraph. Lazio alone battled more than 20 brush and forest fires last week, including 2 in the province of Rome. Volunteers and firefighters continue to battle flames from the ground and in the air. Last Monday, Italian finance police raided an underground tunnel in Rome, seizing 750 pounds of marijuana with a street value of more than 3 million euros. The 43,000 square feet tunnel, located in central Rome, was constructed during the country's fascist period under Benito Mussolini for a planned subway line. A police officer noticed the smell of marijuana emanating from the tunnel while on his beat and informed superiors, an action which led to the raid. Some of the marijuana was already bagged awaiting transport. Police also discovered drying lamps and weighing equipment. While the growth of mushrooms in underground passages is legal, marijuana farms are not. The owner of the farm, a 57-year-old man, was arrested. Officials noted the high level of organization they discovered, as well as the significant financial backing such a sophisticated operation would require. And finally today, in sport. The new Serie A football season is set to kick off on August 25th, with Fiorentina battling Antonio Di Natale's Udinese club in Florence, and defending league champion Juventus, hosting Parma in Turin. Juve will begin its title defense without its manager, Antonio Conte, banned for 10 months by the Italian Football Federation for not reporting match fixing by some of his players at Siena during the 2010-11 campaign. Conte is expected to appeal the length of the ban this week. Meanwhile, AC Milan begins its quest to reclaim the league title it won 2 years ago on August 26th, at home against the Genovese side Sampdoria. While the Rossoneri, the red and black as Milan is known, are keeping up a brave face, this off-season, Milan has sold off its most successful, high-profile players, including the Swede, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and the Brazilian, Thiago Silva, while doing little to replace their loss. In doing so, the club profited by about 60 million euros, published reports say. Milan coach Massimiliano Allegri says publicly that the sales of such high-priced players were good decisions for the club's future, and that Milan will remain competitive even in the short term as it seeks to develop young, unheralded talent. But some Italian football observers, including Frank Giuliano, wonder if Milan's fire sale leaves Serie A with no superstars and an even more rapid decline than previously thought. While Italy's national squad enjoyed tremendous success in the 2012 Euro, finishing second only to all-world Spain, Giuliano points out that Serie A has lost a host of renowned footballers in recent years, including Ibra, Silva, Balotelli, Lavezzi, Eto'o, Pastore, Aguilani, and Fabio Borini. This suggests that Italian club teams will struggle mightily in the years to come in competitions beyond their league, and that ultimately the quality of play on the international level will be affected adversely too. That is, unless Italian football at all levels can develop talent at home and figure out a way to pay their best players enough to prevent them from jumping to England, France, Spain, or even China. That won't be easy, as a Federation report reveals that football across Italy lost 428 million euros last year, and that Serie A's own debt is now more than 2.5 billion euros. And of the nearly 110 football clubs competing at all levels in Italy, only 19 were profitable. Last season, the average attendance at Serie A matches was 22,493, the lowest since the 2006-07 season, and a lack of star-quality players certainly won't help. But on the other hand, it must be noted that Spain has built one of the greatest international squads of all time, as well as a wildly entertaining professional league with a few high-priced players from other nations, but mostly homegrown talent. And while it can be argued that only 2 La Liga clubs stand among the world's elite club sides, Barca and Real Madrid, they enjoy so much success and draw such an avid following that they help carry the rest of the league to the world. Can this be a model for Italian football to move forward in the years ahead? Spanish clubs have their own financial problems, but perhaps this formula can be a ray of hope for Italian football, which, when played well, as it was by Pirlo, Buffon, and the rest of Italy's national team this summer, is full of passion, joy, wonder, aspiration, and above all, humanity. That's all for this edition of Italian News in English. We'll be back soon with another episode. Grazie mille e ciao.